Hey guys, Anthony Sanchez here, Strange Radio Central. Welcome to the podcast. Today I want to talk about some cool stuff. I want to give you a little bit of insight into my recent appearances with George Noory on Coast to Coast AM and Clyde Lewis on Ground Zero Radio. But before I do that, whenever I ship books, because I write books, I wrote UFO Nexus, UFO Highway 2.0, and the Modern UFO UAP Researcher's Handbook. Whenever I ship these books out, I always include a signed custom bookmark. They're really nice. But I also signed the book, but I also include a letter, personalized letter. I wonder if I'm the only one that does that. I don't know. But in the letter that I most recently wrote, because I had to ship books out to Ohio and Southern California, I wrote a passage that I wanted to share with you. In these times of widespread fascination with UAPs and mystery drones, I urge you to maintain your critical perspective and question narrative about alien activity and religious signs. Stay focused, disregard the distractions, and rely on trusted sources. So I thought that was important to share. Why? Because I'm going to tell you about some of the sources that I follow. Could they be trusted? I think so. So today started off like any other day for me. Brewing my morning coffee, Starbucks, houseblend, and then catching up on the latest from the podcast that I like to watch in the morning. I wake up to see if anybody came out with something the night before. Patrick from the Beret podcast, he's based in Texas, and the Backyard Professor, who I believe is based in Utah. I want to say Utah. News Nation, and others who are my go-to sources for everything related to UAPs, UFOs, NHI, and all of a sudden the interesting, mysterious drone hysteria. Well, I love to start my day this way. And in the evenings, of course, I switch gears over to Hecklefish Moriarty and AJ Gentile from the Y-Files before finally winding down with Coast to Coast AM with George Noory and then Clyde Lewis on Ground Zero. Right. So, this particular video that I'm making today was inspired by my recent appearance on Coast to Coast, where I delved into why I believe all the drone incidents are collectively a part of a psy-op. That's a psychological operation. I'm even contemplating whether this is an act by an adversary like a China or a Russia or Iran, based on what people have stated. But I'm coming to the conclusion that it's probably us, the United States. So what I discovered on the Vetted podcast was really cool. That led me to another podcast called the Antihero Podcast with Tyler Hoover and Brent Tucker, two veterans of the United States military. And they have created an incredible platform. It's more about the military, and they delve into the discourse with regards to retired and active military. Very cool stuff. You would not expect them to be the genesis or source for UAP information, but in episode 102, titled Old School Green Beret, they had a discussion with a gentleman by the name of Kurt Mytchall, a former Green Beret and a member of the UAP task force. This was not supposed to be a show about UFOs, but boy, oh boy, it was. And Patrick from Vetted, I think he did an outstanding job unraveling what Mytchall shared. And by the way, Kurt Mytchall has a very impressive background, and Vetted did like a PowerPoint presentation or something to that effect, like bullet points on the screen, detailing the guy's history. And I went over to the Patreon site of both Tyler and Brent, and they are just as qualified to discuss anything with regards to the military. These are some badass dudes. And after what I've seen on the Antihero podcast, then after what I've seen from Patrick, who unraveled it all, guys, we really need to pay attention, because all of the recent developments, everything happening over New Jersey, combined with what Mytchall disclosed, it strongly suggests that we're witnessing a psy-op, an intricate test and analysis of public perception and reaction. This is not good. Remember, Kurt Mytchall is a former Green Beret, an advisor, current advisor still, for Special Operations Forces Human Performance at the Department of Defense. And he previously served up until 2023 on the UAP task force. He retired in 2023. And on the Antihero podcast, when he was looking back at all his experiences, I think that this is a guy who's disillusioned with how one of these entities, the UAP task force, uses the classified and sensitive information. Because he suggests, now this is based on everything that he disclosed publicly, he suggests that one of the hardest components for him was the concerns of the ethical implications that his work and the broader activities of the UAP task force represent. So I put together some notes right here. Because I too wanted to go. I trust Patrick from Beret. The guy's awesome. But I needed to see that episode for myself. So I went over to the Antihero Podcast and I watched the entirety of it. And I'm going to share with you exactly what Mytchall said, which shares the new insights into the UAP task force. And what his perspectives on the operations and the intentions of the group are. And this is crazy because prior to this, I don't think anybody has given us this much information about the UAP task force. And so the best part of it for me is to finally hear somebody say in plain and simple English what the UAP task force does. And what he says is primarily their top focus is data analysis and vetting. The UAP task force consists of teams that have scientists, engineers, and intelligence officers, and their job is to analyze a variety of sensor data related to UAPs. His role in particular involved the vetting practice. So he was the guy in the group that vetted the information because of his intelligence background. The other thing that they did was multispectral analysis. So beyond just analyzing standard video or images or image data, he says that the task force employs really advanced techniques that fall under that multispectral analysis umbrella to study the UAPs, suggesting that there's a deeper level of technical scrutiny than what is publicly disclosed. They might be doing things that we have no idea of. So, and by the way, that goes back to Elizondo this year and Grush last year. They disclosed information up to a certain point. Then they had to stop because they said they would be in breach of these non-disclosure agreements with the Department of Defense. And they didn't want to get in trouble. But when he started to share what the purpose of the UAP task force is and exactly what is the approach of the teams on the task force, this is the part that's going to upset a lot of people watching this. Because if you're watching me, you already talk about and look into UAPs, NHIs, aliens, extraterrestrials, things of that nature. But he describes covert influence and manipulation as the approach underscoring the purpose, and that's not good. So the UAP Task Force's operations are part of broader efforts to covert influence, similar to techniques used in other government operations, suggesting that the release of information about UAPs might be controlled to manipulate public perception or prepare the populace for unspecified future actions. What? Exactly. They are planning something, which brings me to the next point that he said. He said that they are testing public reaction. He likens the release of the UAP information to a litmus test that was used during the pandemic. For instance, when they released all of the public health slogans, the first thing they did was they gauged all of our responsiveness. Then they looked at our compliance. How well did you and I comply to their narrative? And he stated that these tests potentially serve to see how the public reacts to revelations about UAPs so that they can adjust strategies accordingly, because something else is coming. He also talked about his skepticism about an alien presence. Hold on to that thought. He mentioned that despite the public speculation and the various conspiracy theories that are out and about, he personally saw no evidence of alien involvement in the phenomena that was being studied, which indicates a belief that much of what is being fed to the public could be misinformation or misdirection. Guys, when I was on Coast to Coast on Monday, I literally said to George, because George asked me, is this a government psy-op? Is this a distraction? And I said, yes, these are drones made by humans. We are seeing drones, not made by aliens. And they are diverting us away from something that really happened of importance. And guys, I have to add my 2 cents on this. This does not discount the possibility of NHI, of an alien presence, nor does it negate the idea that numerous drones that we're seeing right now are not part of a distraction, because they are. They're distracting us from other significant events. For instance, no one is talking about the Oregon incident anymore, where multiple pilots witnessed 4 red spherical objects in a corkscrew pattern formation erratically changing speed. That definitely were not drones. So those objects terrified some very credible individuals and attracted the attentions of serious researchers. Suddenly, though, all of a sudden that incident is no longer in the spotlight. Why? Chase Hughes, I don't have it here written, but Chase Hughes, let me see if I have it on my screen somewhere. Chase Hughes is this guy that talks about psychological operations. And the one thing he said to be very weary of is what he refers to as coordinated messaging. The moment you see all the news agencies across the country talking about the same exact thing, using the same exact verbiage, where you can layer them on top of one another and it's literally a cut and paste, cookie cutter representation of the news, especially when it comes to something like the drones, that's a psy-op. You know, he said that we needed to separate the manipulation from the genuine news, analyzing the source, asking if the defense contractors are involved in any way whatsoever. With the drones, perhaps. And again, if the mainstream media is all repeating the same message, we need to be very wary of that. But with regards to Oregon, suddenly nobody's talking about that anymore. I'm going to close with this. To me, Kurt Mytchall's revelations provide a rare inside look perspective on the secretive operations of the UAP task force. I don't think we've ever received any information like this. When you think of groups like Arrow and any other federal or military agency, they don't have to necessarily disclose anything to you or me. Technically, they do have to inform Congress, but as we've seen this past year, that doesn't always play out. Not transparently. Remember what I said about Elizondo and Grush only providing information up to a certain limit before they had to stop themselves. So, what Mytchall shared portrays a group that's deeply engaged in sophisticated analysis of the UAP, which one tells me UAP are real, and I also believe that the NHI are real. But when you factor in his insights into the methods of how the information is released and how they are manipulating the public, that paints a complex, dark narrative of the scientific inquiry that they're perhaps performing is not being shared with us when they get the real results. And clearly there's some sort of a strategic influence in place. His skepticism regarding the presence of extraterrestrial elements with regards to the UAPs tells me that that's what he believes, and that's fine. But what I find more intriguing is that he does believe we're being manipulated. So my final takeaway from Mytchall and the information that he shared is that his skepticism regarding the presence of an extraterrestrial elements within the work that the UAP task force does, he just doesn't believe in aliens, nor does he believe in UFOs. But his concerns about the manipulation and the control of the public is very concerning. And I do believe that. So all of the information that he shared raises significant questions about the transparency and the true intentions of the government, especially with the handling of UAP information. It sounds like a psychological operation, a psy-op. It sounds like they are distracting us from something that really happened or something that's ongoing, and they're going to keep it that way until they're done, until they've accomplished whatever it is they set out to do. Anyway, that's all I have for today. On Coast to Coast, on Ground Zero Radio, we talked about, is it aliens? Are these foreign adversaries? Is it a psy-op? Is there a bigger play here? And I think that there is. So please check those shows out. Subscribe to my channel here, Strange Radio Central. And I want to thank you guys, and I want to wish all of you a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, everything. My name's Anthony Sanchez. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.